What's up guys, my name is Ace, and yesterday we got a brand new aftermarket part with our weekly challenges, and this is the JAK Signal Burst Kit for the Holger 556, and also it can be used on the DM56 marksman rifle. So in today's video, we're going to be diving deep into exactly what this kit does for these two guns, and on top of that, I'm going to be sharing the best builds that I was able to create while using this JAK Signal Burst Kit. And without further ado, let's dive right into this, and we're going to first focus on the Holger 556 and how this kit will affect that, then we'll get into the DM56 after that. But with this, on the Holger 556, our damage profile is not affected at all by the JAK Signal Burst Kit, which means, just like with the base version of the Holger 556, it's going to be a 4 to 5 shot kill, and we deal the same amount of damage anywhere in the body. And then when it comes to headshots, we do deal more damage to the head. However, in that maximum damage range, you do have to land multiple headshots mixed in with body shots in order to cut that down to a 3-shot kill. And you'll see just why this isn't really all that viable with this gun when we look at the recoil. But before we get into that, let's have a look at our rate of fire, and I guess I haven't even mentioned it yet. The JAK Signal Burst Kit turns these guns into a 4-round burst. And with the Holger 556, our rate of fire within each burst is about 750 rounds per minute, which is actually quite a bit faster than the base rate of fire of this gun in full auto. However, there's a fairly punishing burst delay at roughly 115 milliseconds. Keep in mind that is a hand-tested value and there is a little bit of room for error on that, but it is a slow burst delay for sure. And what this means for our time to kill potential is with a 4-shot kill, or a 1-burst kill, we're killing in 240 milliseconds, which is a very fast time to kill and noticeably better than the base version of this gun. However, when we drop off to a 5-shot kill, if you don't get that 1 burst, because of that really punishing burst delay, we now have a very slow time to kill at 435 milliseconds. So we can already see this makes this a very high risk, high reward attachment. But next, let's have a look at our range values, which actually don't change at all with this kit. So we're dealing the same damage at the same ranges with the Holger 556. However, a big thing I wanted to point out here is we do get a significantly boosted bullet velocity up to 1,035 meters per second, which is insanely fast for this game. Now, is that really going to make a big difference on most of the 6v6 engagements you find yourself in? No, probably not. The base 690 meters per second is more than enough for the majority of gunfights you'll find in the 6v6 maps. But it is nice to know that our bullet velocity is very nicely boosted here. And then finally, for the breakdown of this kit on the Holger 556, let's have a look at our recoil. And this is where this kit really struggles, in my opinion. As you can see, within each burst, there is a ton of recoil. It not only kicks upward very heavily, it also tends to lean to the right by a noticeable margin. And while the total magnitude will cap off at a certain point if you keep spamming this, the important part to note is the recoil within the burst is brutal, and if you're trying to get a 1-burst kill, it can be very difficult beyond close to somewhat medium ranges. And there we go, that wraps it up for the JAK Signal Burst on the Holger 556. I will be sharing my best class setup that I was able to create while using this kit for that gun toward the end of the video, but before we do that, let's cover the stats on the DM56. And unlike with the Holger while using this kit, we do see a reduction to our damage values across the board when using this kit on the DM56. And just like with the Holger 556, this is going to be a 4 to 5 shot kill. However, headshots are much more viable on this since you only need to mix 1 headshot with a torso or arm shot at any range to reduce the number of shots to kill. Then when it comes to our rate of fire and time to kill, it's actually the exact same as when you use this kit on the Holger 556. So 750 rounds per minute within each burst, roughly 115 millisecond burst delay, and our time to kill potential is going to be 240 milliseconds with a 1-burst kill, and 435 milliseconds if you need that 5th shot to kill. So again, still a very high risk, high reward sort of gun when we're just talking about raw damage output. Next, let's have a look at our range values, which again, we have the exact same damage range drop-offs, but like I said, our damage values change. So instead of having a 3-shot kill potential at any range, now it's just going to be a 4 to 5 shot kill. Also, just like with the Holger 556, we see a significant boost to our bullet velocity. It's now 1,050 meters per second. Again, completely overkill for most 6v6 situations, but for something like ground war or just some of the bigger maps, this may be very useful for you. And then finally, for the important stats to break down, let's have a look at our recoil using this kit on the DM56. And while I would say this kit is a bit more accurate on this gun compared to the Holger 556, it still does have a lot of recoil within each burst. You'll see it travels quite a bit upward and to the right in a much more straight line than the Holger 556. But still, that's a lot of recoil to be accounting for within the burst itself in order to land any sort of consistent 1-burst kills beyond close to mid-range. And there we go, that wraps it up for all of the important base stats of this kit on the two guns that it can be used on at this point. One other thing I wanted to point out is with this kit, it comes with its own free optic, and it's actually quite a nice looking optic in my opinion, in first person view. However, something I did notice is it also seems to have a laser built into this optic. And I was curious to see if this is a visible laser for enemy players, and it turns out it's one of those lasers where the enemies aren't realistically going to be seeing the laser beam itself, but they may see the dot projected onto whatever surface that you're aiming at any given point. So it is nice to know you don't really have to worry a whole lot about that laser being visible to enemy players, because it's rare that they're ever going to see that dot on a surface and know where it's coming from and be able to react to that situation accordingly. And with that, we can finally get into the best attachment combinations that I've found while using this kit on each of these guns, and we're going to start this off with my Holger 556 setup. And with this one, we really had to lean heavily into recoil. So we're using the X10 ported 290 muzzle. This one's going to help a lot with that vertical climb within each burst, and this is going to help your one burst consistency a lot. But on top of that, we also have the FTAC SP10 angled grip to help more with that horizontal recoil, the MWIII 20 grip, which is going to be helping with recoil, as well as the Ascent Lord stock. And with all of this combined, this is definitely far more accurate, especially within each burst that you fire. That burst is going to be a lot tighter together, which is nice. But even then, putting everything we've got into recoil control, it's still not going to be like a pinpoint accurate burst gun. It's still going to be reasonably inaccurate, and at those really long ranges or against somebody that's using cover really effectively, you'll still struggle to get those one burst kills. And unfortunately, in order to gain that, we had to sacrifice a good amount to our aim down sight speed. This is now 335 milliseconds, which is pretty slow for this game, so you can't be rushing around super effectively with it. And our sprint out time is also very noticeably slower than the base. And there we go. That's unfortunately the best build I could create while using this kit on the Holger 556. This definitely makes it much more usable, and you can find some success with it, but overall, I don't really consider it to be that great, and I'd honestly just rather use this gun without the kit. But next, let's get into my DM56 4-round burst build. And with this one, we're once again using that X10 ported 290 muzzle combined with the FTAC SP angled grip. Those two combine quite nicely with this particular kit. On top of that, we're using the Regency 12 stock, which is going to help with recoil control. And then after that, I found that none of the combs really made this build better, so I wanted to avoid the combs, didn't want to put a magazine attachment on there, and I kind of like the default optic this gives you. So as a result, I had a free attachment here that I just decided to throw into my ammunition with the armor-piercing ammo since it has no downsides attached to it. And with this particular build, again, we are seeing some better accuracy, although there is still a noticeable amount of recoil within each burst, so extremely long ranges, you're still going to struggle a little bit with that recoil. But at least compared to the previous build, I managed to keep my aim down sight speed a bit more reasonable at 307 milliseconds. And our sprint out time actually didn't change with this. It's 200 milliseconds, which again, that's a very reasonable sprint out time. So you can actually be slightly more aggressive with this build compared to the previous one. But once again, at the end of the day, I'm just not a big fan of the JAK Signal Burst conversion kit on either of these guns. In both cases, I would say this kit makes the gun a little bit worse, even though our time to kill potential improves. The odds of getting that one burst kill are just not great in my experience, and I'd much rather lean toward a consistent time to kill potential that's still good while using the base version of these guns without this kit. And that's quite unfortunate because I was excited for this kit to be coming to the game, and I was also really excited to see that it works for two different guns, but I really think it needs to be more accurate than it currently is, or they need to cut down on the burst delay or something. Because at least in my opinion, if you're gonna have a burst gun that has a very long and punishing burst delay, then it should be pinpoint accurate. Or if you want to go the other direction, give it a short burst delay, but then make it fairly inaccurate within the burst. And I think that's a good way to balance burst guns, and they just haven't hit the mark with this particular kit. Now, of course, these are just my opinions on the JAK Signal Burst Kit, and this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you guys feeling about this kit so far on both of these guns? Have you managed to find some enjoyment with it and some success with it? Or are you kind of like me? Are you thinking this just makes these guns worse overall? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.